Welcome. My name is Krista Sohm, and I'm the Vice President of Communications at Meritor. Today we're going to talk about the real benefits and concerns related to 6x2 axles. While 6x2s are common in Europe and growing in the United States, Canada doesn't currently allow 6x2s with electronically controlled air suspension technology. With us today, we have industry leaders to talk about this technology and its application throughout North America. They are Chris Trakowski, Vice President of Maintenance for Bison Transport; Phil Breaker, Vice President of Operations for Nussbaum Transportation; Steve Miller, Controls Engineer at Bendix; Steve Lawrence, Manager of Fleet Sales, Training, and Service with Meritor Wabco; Carl Mayer, Director of Product Strategy for North American Axles at Meritor; and Mike Roth, Executive Director for the North American Council for Freight Efficiency, also known as NACFE. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to direct my first question to you, Carl. In terms of configurations, the difference between a 6x4 and a 6x2, help us understand that a little in a more technical aspect.
Most of the tractor-trailer combinations that you see on the road today are what we call 6x4 vehicles. And what that means is that there's 6 wheels, 4 of which are powering the vehicle. And the 4 that are powering the vehicle are a tandem axle, okay? And the torque is actually split equally between those 2 drive axles. Mm-hmm. In comparison, there's a 6x2 configuration, which is where you take one driving axle, place it in the front typically, and then there's a tag axle in the rear position. That tag axle is a non-driving axle. And by eliminating that carrier, or the gearing within that axle, will actually increase efficiency because there's less churning losses going through the oil, there's less gear meshes, and so forth.
And I'm sure we're probably going to hear that there's some weight savings as well with having one less drive axle.
Yeah, customers actually spec 6x2s typically for 2 things. One is weight savings, where you can save about 170 kilograms by eliminating that carrier and that second axle. And then secondly, customers will want the fuel efficiency gains associated.
Let's go to Mike Roth. NACFE recently did a study about 6x2s where you conducted various tests both with fleets and OEMs. Can you help us understand what were the major findings in terms of true performance gains that came out of these tests?
So we did a pretty extensive report, talked to over 20 fleets, did some interviews, met with all the truck builders and axle builders and so forth, and as well as suspensions and other features, and collected a lot of data, unpublished sets of data that lead us to believe that the fuel savings are about 2.5%. And for most tractor trailers in a normal duty cycle, that's about $700 per percent. So that's like $2,000 in fuel savings for every truck. So it's substantial.
I'm going to turn to Steve Miller with Bendix. Bendix has the E-Track system, I believe. Can you help us understand, does that system improve traction control on 6x2s?
Yeah, there's 2 modes of operation that E-Track has. You have an automatic mode, so when the brake controller senses wheel slip on the drive axle, it's going to send a signal to the pneumatic components that's going to reduce the air on the undriven axle. The leveling valve is going to pick that up. It's going to start increasing the request for air. That's going to be picked up by the driven axle, and that's going to help the vehicle accelerate. Now, the second mode of operation is a driver mode that, say the driver knows I'm at a stoplight, it looks like I'm going to get some wheel slip, they can hit a switch and actuate the system.
ECAS works very similarly. We do have also the automatic feature. When the wheels sense a slippage, it sends a signal using the ATC, and it'll slow the wheel down to make sure that it gets out of the event that it's in, and that typically takes less than 1 second. So what'll happen is the air pressure will then drop on the tag axle, which will then put more weight on the drive axle, thus giving you better traction.
Let's talk to our fleets. Phil, you're the VP of Operations for Nussbaum Transportation, recipient of Top 100 Trucker in 2012 Fleet of the Year. You've been running 6x2s for quite some time. Can you tell us how long have you had 6x2s in your fleet, and about how many do you have now currently?
We started working with the 6x2 technology about 3 years ago. And our main purpose for going to the 6x2 was fuel savings. Now, the weight benefit and payload, increased payload, is a side benefit of that, which also drives towards the fuel efficiency of the light of the vehicle. So we looked at it for fuel efficiency. We found, like Mike said, some really nice savings there. I think he mentioned 2.5%. We saw even closer to 3 or 4%. On the traction side, like you said, trucks are going to get stuck at times, especially in a lot of snow. And this winter, we had a very difficult winter for that. So we had a number of tow outs, both with 6x4 tractors and 6x2s. But the interesting thing that we found, and going back and looking at the 6x2 tractors, is those without ECAS were 3 times more likely to need a tow out than those with ECAS.
You're with Bison Transport, one of Canada's top fleets, recipient of many awards. Canada doesn't currently allow advanced 6x2s. What does that mean to you as a Canadian fleet that at current that is not an option?
We're in an environment today, we're in a very competitive environment, regardless of where the carrier happens to be based, whether they're US based or Canadian based. The competitive arena that we're in today, the challenges that we're in from a pricing standpoint are quite severe, all the way through the supply chain.
Meritor, Webco, Bendix, and several others have jointly been working with the Canadian government in hopes of actually changing the current legislation. In Canada, there's a memorandum of understanding on weights and dimensions. They state that within a tandem axle, both axles must be loaded equally or within 1,000 kilograms of each other. 97% of the time that that vehicle is operating, those axles are equally loaded. When there's a traction event or some type of engagement of the automatic suspension controls, we're only talking about that happening 3% of the time. When that engages, there may be an event where it's actually over 1,000 kilograms. It's important to understand too, though, that even during that event, it's only 80 seconds duration. So
The load transfer.
That's correct. So, the laws were, like I said, enacted to protect the roadways. Within 80 seconds, we believe that there's not going to be any impact on the roads.
And this load shifting, it only occurs at very low speeds, and really it's a relatively small amount of load we're shifting. So it's just about getting those trucks out of some slippery situations where they can avoid a tow.
Right.
I mean, if they're deeply stuck, they're deeply stuck.
We feel very good about being able to yield a 1 to a 1.5% return or efficiency. This is one that clearly has been demonstrated both in the I'll call the real world, and then one in testing scenarios that NACVI's been involved in. So for us, we look at that and say we're up against the competition who is leveraging that technology, and we're certainly going to do what's right, and we're certainly going to follow the policies and the regulations.
And from a maintenance standpoint, that weight savings that you gain came from pulling away a set of gears and drive line, and so now you're not maintaining that back axle.
Right.
So less maintenance
Right.
overall.
I think another thing also that's a benefit is you don't have to have 2 drive tires on each axle.
Yep.
So that means that now what you can do is you can put a trailer tire on that non-driven axle, or perhaps even a retread. So there's a savings right there.
Mike, did NACV or does NACV have any forecast for what you expect the adoption to be right now in the United States over the next several years? Do we expect the tide to really turn on 6x2s?
We predict that this could double every year. So 3% to 6% to 9, 12, 15% in the next few years, which would make this a really fast adoption.
Is the operating performance of the 6x2 equal to the 6x4?
When the driver is operating, which he does, like we were saying, 97% of the time, and out on the highway, there's not a difference. This traction situation or concern that a driver might have is really, it might be 0 speed when he's trying to take off, or at low speeds.
In terms of the increased stability?
Right. This year, out of the jackknife or sliding events that we incurred in accidents, we didn't have any with 6x2s, 6x4, and remember only 90% of our fleet is 6x4, so we actually are feeling good about that, and that's nice to be able to tell a driver if he does have concerns. Many times safety is going to come up.
I want to thank everyone for joining us today. You have been great. As you heard today, 6x2 systems deliver lighter weight, greater fuel savings, lower maintenance costs, higher payloads, improved traction, and lower greenhouse gas emissions. Ultimately, 6x2s provide a competitive advantage for fleets who adopt this technology. But first, Canada needs to allow 6x2s to travel across all of North America. To learn more, go to 6x2facts.com.